In the city of Florence, there lived a young man named Luca. He was intelligent, hard-working, loyal. Yet every room treated him like dust. When he spoke, nobody listened. When he entered, nobody noticed. When he disappeared, nobody cared. At first, Luca blamed society. Then he blamed luck. Then he blamed money. But one winter night, an old man sitting beside a dying fire laughed at him and said, "People do not ignore you because you are weak. They ignore you because you have taught them they can." Luca looked at the old man carefully. Sharp eyes, calm face, dangerous smile. The man introduced himself with only one name, Machiavelli. And from that night, Luca learned a truth darker than betrayal itself. The world does not respect good people. The world respects valuable people. The next morning, Machiavelli took Luca to the market. The streets were loud, merchants shouted, rich men walked proudly, poor men begged quietly. Machiavelli asked Luca a simple question. "Who controls this city?" Luca pointed toward the palace. "The rulers." Machiavelli smiled. "No, watch carefully." They stood there for hours. A rich merchant entered the market. Everyone greeted him. A soldier walked through the street. People made way immediately. Then an old priest appeared. Even powerful men lowered their heads respectfully. Machiavelli turned toward Luca. "Do you understand now?" Luca shook his head. Machiavelli spoke softly. "Attention is power, and power is never given freely." Then he pointed toward a beggar sitting near the fountain. Nobody looked at him. Nobody listened to him. Nobody cared if he lived or died. "Why is he ignored?" Machiavelli asked. "Because he is poor," Luca replied. "No," Machiavelli answered. "He is ignored because he offers nothing the world fears losing." Luca remained silent. The sentence cut deeper than a knife. For weeks, Luca followed Machiavelli through Florence. He expected lessons about wisdom. Instead, he learned manipulation. One day, Machiavelli gave him an order. "For the next month, speak less." Luca frowned. "How will people notice me if I stay silent?" Machiavelli laughed. "That's exactly why they ignore you now." Luca obeyed reluctantly. Before this, he was always available, always explaining himself, always trying to impress people, always chasing attention. But now he changed. When others argued, he listened quietly. When people mocked him, he did not react. When friends called him every night, he answered less. Something strange happened. People started noticing him. One friend suddenly asked, "Why have you changed?" Another said, "You seem different now." A woman who once ignored him began staring at him during conversations. Luca was confused. "I did nothing," he told Machiavelli. "Exactly," Machiavelli replied. Then he said the sentence Luca would never forget. "The lion does not chase attention. The jungle notices the lion because he can survive without approval." Months passed. Luca became calmer, more mysterious, more controlled. But Machiavelli was not satisfied. "You have stopped being ignored," he said, "but now you must learn influence." One evening they entered a gathering filled with wealthy men. Luca felt nervous. Nobody there respected him. Machiavelli whispered, "Tonight you will speak only once." Hours passed. Men argued loudly about politics, trade, and war. Everyone tried desperately to sound intelligent. Luca remained silent. Then suddenly one powerful merchant asked him, "You have said nothing all evening. What do you think?" Every eye turned toward Luca. His heart raced. He remembered Machiavelli's words. "A starving man eats everything. A powerful man chooses carefully." So Luca spoke slowly. Only 2 sentences, simple, sharp, direct. The room became silent. For the first time in his life, Powerful men listened carefully to him. After the gathering, Luca smiled proudly, but Machiavelli looked disappointed. You made one mistake. What mistake? You enjoyed their approval. Luca's smile disappeared. Machiavelli continued walking. The moment you need validation, you lose power. One rainy night, Luca asked the question that had haunted him for years. Why are humans like this? Machiavelli looked at the dark sky. Because humans are selfish creatures. Luca wanted to disagree, but Machiavelli continued. People do not ask who is kind, they ask who is useful. People do not respect honesty, they respect strength. People do not follow the good man, they follow the man who controls outcomes. Luca felt uncomfortable. You make humanity sound evil. Machiavelli shook his head. No, I make humanity sound honest. Then he told Luca a story. There was once a king loved by everyone. He was gentle, forgiving, generous. What happened to him? Luca asked. He was betrayed by the very people he trusted. And the man who replaced him? A feared ruler. Luca looked disturbed. Machiavelli stopped walking. Never confuse love with loyalty. Years passed. Luca was no longer invisible. Now people waited for his words. They respected his silence. They feared disappointing him. Even wealthy men asked for his advice, but success changed him. Slowly, he became colder, more strategic. He stopped helping people who drained his energy. He stopped explaining himself. He stopped begging for friendship. One day, an old friend confronted him angrily. You think you are too important now? Luca looked at him calmly. No, I simply learned my value. The friend laughed bitterly. You changed, Luca answered. Yes, because the old version of me was ignored. That night, Machiavelli finally smiled proudly. You are beginning to understand. But then his expression became serious again. Now comes the most dangerous lesson. One winter evening, Machiavelli disappeared. No message, no explanation. Days passed, then weeks. Luca searched everywhere. Finally, he found an old servant who whispered he was arrested secretly. Luca rushed toward the prison, but when he arrived, the guards laughed at him. You cannot enter. Luca offered money. They refused. He demanded answers. They ignored him. For the first time in years, Luca felt powerless again. That night, he sat alone beside the river, furious. How could the great Machiavelli be defeated so easily? Then suddenly, he remembered every lesson: attention, power, value, fear, scarcity, influence. And finally, he understood something terrifying. Machiavelli was never teaching him how to gain respect. He was teaching him how the world truly works, not morally, not emotionally, strategically. Luca realized something else. People had not started respecting him because he became kinder. They respected him because he became harder to replace. That truth destroyed the last innocent part inside him. Months later, the rulers of Florence invited Luca to a private council. Years ago, they would not even notice him. Now they wanted his support. One ruler asked carefully, "What made you change so much?" Luca looked around the room slowly. Then he answered, "I stopped asking for permission to exist." The room fell silent. Another man asked, "Who taught you this?" Luca smiled faintly. "A ghost." The rulers laughed nervously, but Luca's eyes remained cold because he finally understood the greatest secret of power. The world ignores people who seek acceptance. The world studies people who create consequences. Years later, young men began visiting Luca for advice. Many complained about being ignored. One said, "My friends disrespect me." Another said, "No woman notices me." Another whispered, My family thinks I am weak." Luca listened carefully. Then he told them the truth nobody wants to hear. People ignore desperate energy. If you constantly seek approval, you teach others your value is low. If you speak too much, your words become cheap. If you are always available, your absence means nothing. The young men looked shocked. One asked quietly, "Then how do we gain respect?" Luca answered, "Build a life so valuable that your silence becomes louder than your words." Then he continued, "Learn skills. Control emotions. Protect your attention. Stop chasing people. Become difficult to replace." The room remained silent. Finally, one young man asked, "Is that what Machiavelli taught you?" Luca stared into the fire for a long moment. Then he replied, "No." The young men looked confused. Luca smiled faintly. "He taught me something darker." "What?" Luca leaned forward slowly. "Most people do not ignore you accidentally. They ignore you to test whether you will disrespect yourself trying to be noticed." Silence filled the room. Outside, cold wind moved through the streets of Florence. And somewhere in that darkness, the shadow of Machiavelli still smiled. Because centuries pass, kings die, empires collapse, but human nature never changes.